Hello everyone, this is Bruce Walton with the Chronicle Telegram. We are just a few minutes away from the start of the State of the Oberlin City address and for the State of the Schools address over here at Henry's Barn in Oberlin, and we're just waiting. We have a very lively and large attendance. We have Oberlin City Council President Brian Burgess, as well as Oberlin School Superintendent Dave Hall here, ready to be able to just talk about just what the year's been for the two entities.
Okay, everyone, I think we've got it now. Really sorry about that. It's amazing how it works when you're in the office, you bring it in here, and what happened? So, welcome to the State of the City, State of the Schools event this evening. My name is Brian Burgess. I'm the president of Oberlin City Council. With me is Ron Hillard, Oberlin City Manager, and Dr. David Hall, Superintendent of Oberlin City Schools. So we're very happy that you were able to join us this evening. This is the first event that the city has held in this facility. A year ago at the State of the City event, we talked about this facility as it had, I don't think it had opened yet. It was just under construction, and we were expecting that it would be a benefit to the community, and here we are. So, on with the evening. So tonight we're going to go over a few highlights from 2018, not to rehash stuff from the last presentation, but maybe to cover a few things that happened in the second half of the year, projects that we're expecting for this year, and a few previews for what we expect in 2020.
Your microphone doesn't work.
Maybe I'll hold it closer. Mr. Hillard.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, thank you for being here. This is an important part of our mission to communicate in a way that's effective and that articulates what we think is important as a city government. Again, this is the primary piece for the city of Oberlin. Later on, Dr. Hall will do 5 strategies all the time. One is city services. What we like to say is that our primary opportunity to affect citizens in a positive way is to provide excellent public service. From there, we acknowledge that there are other very common values in Oberlin that we embrace. And the first one is environmental sustainability. The second is social equity. The third is community development. And then the fourth is neighborhood outreach. And our strategy is aligned to a variety of tasks, a lot of staff and resources to make a difference in these 5 areas. So Dr. Hall, are you pressing the button, or is that you, Brian? From there, when we talk about city services, we have a number of excellent support systems and a lot of professionals around the city that make a huge difference every single day. As listed here, we talk about public works, streets, parks, water, sewer, utilities, not only the water, sewer, refuse, but the collection systems and the professional administration that goes around making a difference in utilities and making sure they're viable. Planning related to community development, planning regarding site plan reviews and comprehensive planning. We take those things very, very seriously. So we note the planning efforts. Again, fire and police, one of those, sometimes one of those things where you only want fire and police when you want fire and police, but the reality is that's a service that's fine-tuned every single day with absolute professionals making a difference, and we'll talk a little more about that. And of course the finance department and the finances that do make a difference for us so that we can do our jobs and we can provide all 5 of the strategies for you. So as we dive into city services, we want to just touch base on a couple of the services and the projects. We have, again, the 5 strategies. We have 7 departments, or the departments that implement and engage in our 5 strategies. And then we have over 80 strategies we're trying to accomplish this year alone. One of them is our street projects. First one I wanted to talk briefly about was pile resurfacing and roundabouts. Pile South Amherst is a street that needs some resurfacing for a period of time. Through the skill and talent of our Public Works Department, we received a grant, and with that grant, we are planning to resurface that stretch of road. But as we were engaging in that project, talking about it strategically, what came forward is, what about the conditions of speed? What about the conditions of pedestrian walking? So from there, we've engaged in some solution building that we think will be successful. We're pushing this forward to have a conversation. But the one is to create 4 roundabouts through that particular stretch between Lorraine Street and Hamilton. And this outlines a couple of details. One, what the potential roundabout would look like, but also where those locations are. The attempt of the roundabouts is to create more of a neighborhood feel. Maybe slow some traffic down, or at least have people know that these roundabouts are intersections to pay attention to. And so our hope is, of course, that this helps us with the speed. And then from there, we're still working on a variety of other solutions, but this is a big, big project for us this year that we're pleased to be able to take on. We hope that this project will be completed, of course, by the end of the year. Brian?
So I did a Google search for pictures of Elm Street, and I came up with this really cool picture from about 1908. Now, at the time this picture was taken, Elm Street was already maybe 30 years old. And much of the infrastructure for that street that was installed then is still installed today. We have a number of older streets in Oberlin, and when the first iteration of this presentation went together, the Public Works Director, Jeff Baumann, thought that it would be better to characterize Elm Street in 2019 as a reconstruction rather than simply a resurfacing. So that is to say, the cast iron water line, the 4-inch line that's in that street, is well over 100 years old, as are the curbs, the sewer lines, and at the end of this year, all of that will be absolutely brand new. It's about a $1.25 million project, and the residents along that street will not only have a smooth ride home, but will also have updated utilities going to their homes. Now this brought up an interesting conversation on City Council. Starting in January of this year, the Ohio EPA implemented new guidelines for homes that might be serviced by a lead water line. Now, we believe that perhaps there are 300 houses in Oberlin that are still serviced by lead water lines, and because of that, our water treatment plant treats the water such that it prevents corrosion of that lead into the home's potable water. But, based on these new EPA guidelines, when we encounter a lead water line going into a house, we're obligated to inform the homeowner and offer to make that repair. We're taking it a step further. Not only are we offering to make the repairs for the homeowners, but we're offering to finance them over a 10-year period. So while the lead line replacement to a home is the homeowner's responsibility, the city is going to do what we can to make sure that's affordable, and that in conjunction with street projects into the future, we'll be able to make that available to everyone. There we go. Rob?
Again, these are just some of the other projects we're taking on. Again, we, as you know, we're very proud of our OMLPS, Ohio Municipal Light and Power Systems, who basically maintain the electric grid and electric services throughout the community. We continue to upgrade projects, for instance, the East Lorraine Street rebuild from 4 kV to 12 kV. Our water system, upgrading our SCADA systems that help us communicate in the system in terms of pressure and volume and effectiveness. Of course, we touched base on the Elm Street water main already. In the wastewater treatment variety, we're talking about UV system replacement, which helps us treat the product after a substantial treatment process. The UV system takes it the rest of the way, and of course the Elm Street sanitary sewer. The stormwater, this is a new event to this year in terms of creating a stormwater utility. It provides a lot of benefit, obviously the infrastructure investment, but also environmentally. Helps us manage not only the quantity of water that comes as a result of rain, but also the quality. And so to that end, we did hire a stormwater coordinator to help develop a master plan to create an effective strategy to those two specific areas. And then of course, refuse and recycling. Increasing recycling is key, but it's also intended to remind everyone to decrease the contamination. So just because you throw it in the recycling bin does not mean that it's a recyclable product. It could very well land in an area that we're not interested in. So before you recycle, clean the containers, make sure that those are the right recyclable materials, and we have a lot of educational material, and we have a great resource coordinator at City Hall to help guide Lori Spratzy. So we appreciate you doing your part and us doing our part to make a difference in that particular area. The fire department, we talked earlier about the professionals that are there. They're our heroes. The fire department, a well-equipped fire department is the secret, not only in terms of providing an environment for our workforce, but also allowing for them to put out a fire or respond to an emergency or a rescue appropriately. So we are engaging and investing in fire equipment. We're also increasing staff, and what that means is we're working with more part-timers for overnight coverage to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make a difference in that area. In terms of the police department, we continue to purchase vehicles to allow them to get from A to B in a timely manner. And also we continue to focus in on our community policing efforts. We believe that police enforcement has a variety of approaches, and the most important to us is to know our neighbors, to understand that we are part of this community and we are making a difference in that area. And so again, I thank Chief Hamner for his work with the fire department, and of course Chief Warfield for his work with the police department. And part of it is working together. When we talk about fire and police, as well as public works and OMLPS and other agencies, communication is the key. For those of us who remember 9/11, we know that part of that tragedy discovered some flaws in our systems as a country, and part of it was communication. So when we look at digital equipment, that's really signaling we're going to continue to be able to talk to each other when we have tragedies, when we have efforts to communicate with each other that are critical and can save lives. So the council, in full support with the departments, we're looking towards investing in our digital equipment so that we can continue to communicate in the best ways we can.
city finances. Too many buttons. Oh, there we go. Put that down. So a number of years ago, wasn't that long ago, 4 or 5 years ago, the state legislature saw fit to reduce the local government fund. The local government fund is a share of state income taxes that go back to local communities statewide. Local communities to cities, townships, school districts, villages. That local government fund was cut in half. That doesn't necessarily mean that your state taxes were cut in half, it just means that the state legislature took the money that had been coming to the cities. At the same time, the state legislature decided to eliminate the inheritance tax. The inheritance tax was a very small tax that applied to inheritances over, I believe, it was over $300,000. So at the time, the city was receiving anywhere between $800,000 and $1.2 million annually from that tax. Both of those combined, when eliminated, meant that Oberlin lost a revenue of about $1 million per year. To make up for that, the voters of Oberlin saw the need, stepped up, and approved an income tax increase. And since then, you can see that our revenues have stabilized. We continue to keep expenditures below annual revenues. The final line that you see there is an estimate for 2019. Here. And we always find that over the course of the year, some projects don't get built, others come in below bid, and we fully expect that by the end of this year, we'll find that our revenues, again, slightly exceeded the expenditures, which is a good thing. So on environmental sustainability, 2019, well, I'll back up. 2018, toward the end of 2018, City Council transferred $2.8 million from the city's Sustainable Reserve Program into a Sustainable Reserve Fund. What does that mean? Well, it means that previously the money had been held under the electric utility, and as such would be used exclusively for electric-related things. By transferring that money now into a Sustainable Reserve Fund, it means that we can now use that money for other sustainable activities, such as, for example, weatherproofing houses, weatherproofing City Hall, new windows, new insulation, new heating systems, things that save us money in the long run, but also reduce our city's carbon footprint. It was revolutionary. I believe we're the only city in Ohio that have done such a thing. We've operated the Efficiency Smart and the Super Rebate programs for a few years now. The Efficiency Smart program is offered through our electric utility parent organization, American Municipal Power. We participate in that program with a number of other cities, perhaps 20 or 25. It provides for rebates on energy efficiency upgrades, and for example, when the Joint Vocational School applied for their rebate, they received about $125,000. I expect that with the construction of the new elementary school moving forward, that building will also receive a sizable rebate for the improvements that are put into it. And finally, I'll touch on the Soul Smart program. The Soul Smart program is a program funded by the U.S. Department of Energy. It provides technical assistance to communities who desire to install more solar energy. Our city's sustainability coordinator, Linda Arbogast, recently hired, is working on implementing this program for Oberlin, and Oberlin would be a member of the Soul Smart network. What that could mean is technical assistance to the city in terms of crafting our policies, our utility policies, and our city zoning ordinances to allow for more solar access, and would give homeowners the opportunity to access that technical assistance free of charge. And finally, the efficient light bulb exchange. So about 10 years ago, the city did one of these where we were exchanging incandescent bulbs for compact fluorescents. Well, now these days, compact fluorescents are outshined by LED bulbs. And I was in IGA just last night with my son and saw the ad for this. You can see that the exchange is going on now. It's being held at Watson Hardware downtown, or call City Hall and look for other locations around the town. Rob?
The next strategy we discussed is social equity. And again, we're proud to be able to talk in terms of our value system regarding social equity, but the reality is we need to continue to acknowledge the lack of inequity. And so to that level, we are pleased to be able to provide some services. Actually, we did hire a full-time code administrator. But part of that full-time code administrator, and that was through maneuvering of some budget processes, readjusting our part-time code people to full, and then making some other changes. But the point that by maneuvering around, it also not only created a full-time code administrator, but we also have assigned duties to that individual to be our social equity officer. And part of being a social equity officer has a broad mission that we're still developing. That position was just created like a month and a half ago, and there's some information on the back table there that talks about it. But with that said, we believe social equity is everyone's responsibility. To that end, we have a variety of contracts that the city continues to participate in. And so our objective is to gather those agencies that we think really believe strongly in the social equity, social justice mission to get together. And let's bring our resources together to continue to raise awareness and make a difference in that area. ADA is, which is the American Disabilities Act, continues to be an issue in the town. And again, I think a lot of small towns struggle with their infrastructure that needs to continue to be upgraded, but yet needs to accommodate all people. And so in the area of ADA, we continue to seek out training opportunities, not only for our social equity folks, but also for our entire organization. And we want to continue to expand that to the individuals, because it is everyone's responsibility. And then to that end, the Oberlin Connector Services, which has been a staple for this community for a number of years, which is driven by the individuals that are listed below, or at least if they're not directly financially contributing, they surely are promoting it, and they're actually telling their clients about this service. This particular service is unique in itself, that provides bus service on Mondays and Thursdays to assist folks to get to their jobs, to get to their medical appointments. We are continuing to see what we can do to improve upon that. The limitation of a 2-day service is clear to us, so can we do more? And so we are looking at opportunities and seeking ways to address that if we can. But social equity is a critical strategy, and we continue to need help. So when you have additional ideas, thoughts, concepts, we're open. I want to hear it. As a city manager, I want to hear more. And with our social equity officer, I know he does it as well. In the area of community development, this is a dynamic subject, and and at this point in this process for me is trying to gauge what community development means to the community. This is at what level do we want growth? What level do we want to assess growth? So in the area of community development, we've listed acquisition of tax delinquent properties. We know there are a number of tax delinquent properties throughout town. What role does the city play in those delinquent properties? And from there, do we acquire them? Don't we acquire them? And if we do, what do we do with them? So that's a conversation that can help maybe address a variety of issues. Secondly is economic development strategy for city-owned property. We own property on the corner of Oberlin and Lorraine. We have other properties in our industrial park. Those are zoned and tagged for industrial development, manufacturing, assembly, commercial. What's the right development we need to do for those properties? Are those properties properly zoned for development? We continue to engage the community to see where we are with that. And so our economic strategy is not only what we like to call catching in baseball terms, but it's also trying to understand how we want to pitch, how we want to talk about Oberlin, to the outer community, to the folks that invest in jobs for folks. How assertive do we want to be? And that's a conversation we continue to have. Institutional zoning is a conversation we're having at this point. The City Council did refer this particular issue back to the Planning Commission to discuss the values of institutional zoning. The whole concept, it really comes back down to looking at what we define and what we are defining as institutional uses, and looking at zoning opportunities so that we can create consistency, maybe limit some of the bureaucracy, but actually keep the controls and the issues that are important to residents out in front. So the Planning Commission continues to work on that, and I think it's an important conversation to have. And I already mentioned earlier about the hiring a code administrator. Code administrator plays two roles, and I already talked about the social equity role as well as the code administration. But within the code administration, it's also talking about how we enforce laws, which are important in terms of neighborhood enhancements, but also it's discovering how we can help people. And that's a process. We have a lot of great agencies in town, a lot of great services. So how can that individual not only assist in telling folks that we have laws and helping in trying to enforce codes that are important to neighborhoods, but also informing individuals there may very well be resources out there, and doing it in a professional way that is respected and understood. So it's a continual conversation we have of having a full-time code administrator versus a part-time or versus a contractual, we think is much more valuable. I'm going to mention our retirement of Henry Wallace. Everyone knows Henry in town? So Henry retired. So part of the challenge has been then how do we fill those shoes, which is very difficult. He did so many things for this community. And we wish him well, and we see him around, and so he's got that great smile on his face. But
Is it his barn?
What's that? Is that Henry's barn? I don't know. No. But with that said, just to fill his shoes has been a tremendous challenge. We've got filling the code administrator's position, working with the police on parking enforcement, those kinds of things. It's been a bit of a challenge, but again, we like to think that those changes will enhance our mission, at least in the area of community development.
So we do have a few new businesses that have come into town in the past year, and we're expecting a few more this year. I think everyone recognizes the image that's right across the street from us at Wendy's. Trustworthy Tattoo opened downtown where the popcorn shop had been. We have Katrina's Tacos on West College Street. Ascension Biomedical, that's Oberlin's newest entry into the industrial park, the medical marijuana facility. My understanding is they're currently growing plants now. And this year we hope to see Tiny Tide open behind the FEV downtown. We've received plans for AutoZone to move into the middle space in the Mistler's building, not where Ace Hardware had been, but immediately next to it, next to CVS. And not a new business, but I would like to call out a welcome expansion in Oberlin. For many towns our size, it would be difficult to attract or maintain a hospital in the community, but the hospital here in Oberlin is actually expanding. That's very, very good news for us. And there may be a few more later this year, but it's too soon to say. So stay tuned on that.
So as part of our neighborhood outreach, we've created quarterly meetings. We call them the city manager's listening sessions. The point is for the city manager to listen, not talk. It's hard sometimes for someone like me, but we get there. We have anywhere between 35 and 50 people who usually attend. Our next one is actually tomorrow. And again, we're going to talk about community development specifically, but it'll be at the library. We welcome everyone to come and be a part of it. We have a number of nonprofits that attend, and some of the nonprofits are actually here today. Again, the objective is to show the community that we are interested in knowing people's thoughts. We want to craft our policies and processes, at least administratively, so that we can better inform policymakers on what we're hearing in the community. And this was a formalized structure we created. This is the last of 4 we're going to be reevaluating those sessions to see how we can even do better. So if you haven't had enough opportunity today, come tomorrow night at the Oberlin Public Library and visit us between 6 and 8. The response I received is pretty positive. We have individual opportunities to talk. We have a small group and large group. And then, of course, those great nonprofits who really support the effort.
Recreation in Oberlin. I've got 2 kids at home who are actively involved in Oberlin's recreation programs. What you see here is a picture from Oberlin's summer program. It's typically held at Prospect Elementary School on Fridays. They like to go over to Splash Zone to the outdoor swimming pool. We have a few new projects or plans laid out for 2019. One of them is Family Fun Night. So for a Friday, one in June, one July, and one in August, there will be events held in parks around the city. We're expecting, this has been described to me, I haven't seen it yet. It's an inflatable movie screen. Big inflatable movie screen. And we'll be showing a Disney film. Rob?
Some Spider-Man movie, I don't know.
Spider-Man.
What's that?
Into the Spider-Verse. Thank you. My 7-year-old knows exactly what it is. The Park Street path lighting. So in Park Street, between Pleasant and Park Street, there's a curvy, windy trail that continues along the edge of the creek. That will be lit up later this summer in a project to make it a little safer to walk through that area. It's really dark, especially when you get back behind the hill between, if you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's a hill there in the creek. So a new lighting down that path. And finally, the Spring Street Park, this is not a project for 2019. We're actually applying for a grant. It's a matching dollar-for-dollar grant. I think it's a $200,000 grant. The city would put up another $200,000. This would allow for improvements at the Spring Street Park. So you can imagine you get to the end of Groveland, where it tees off with Spring. There is no parking at that park. So there's no place for people to pull off. Sometimes people will pull off into the grass and get stuck, and that's not a good thing. So we're going to put in a few new parking spaces. We're going to update the playground equipment. The playground equipment that's there now is 30 years old. And the representative from the company came and looked at it and was amazed that it's still there. But it's certainly past its time for replacement. And finally, we're thinking about running some electric down to the picnic pavilion down at the base of the hill for lighting, and people could plug in roasters and be able to have better picnics down there. You'll recognize this is the entrance to Westwood Cemetery. On the right, you can see the Zavodsky House. Sorry, I'm going to skip around on this slide a bit. The Zavodsky House, we as a community have talked for years now about renovating that structure. So originally, that had been the home of the sexton in Oberlin that maintained the cemetery. We know it as the Zavodsky House. Frank Zavodsky and his family lived there for the better part of 50 years. That house is currently vacant. In order to use it as a public structure, we have to comply with ADA. It needs new electrical, new plumbing, new foundation, new entrances, pretty much new everything. But when it's done by the end of this year, it will be the new reception center, the welcoming area at the cemetery. So for families that have had a graveside service, they'll have a place to retreat to and gather together. On the second floor of the house will be an office space for the city's Buildings and Grounds Department. The Morgan Street Waterworks. There's a lot to talk about with this site, and just briefly, you're aware that the building at the front of the waterworks had burned now 9 years ago, and after extensive discussions with the insurance company, we have a payout of approximately $300,000. The question is now, what do we do? And so the city manager has worked with an engineering firm to get 3 estimates. One, to renovate the building in its entirety, one to tear down the back third that was the most damaged by the fire, and one to demolish the building entirely. Also on that site the public is aware of the low water levels in the western basin of the reservoir. There are two reservoirs there. The western basin, last spring, the ice melted, and we were all surprised to see the level of the water had dropped 8 or 10 feet. For years now, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources has been aware of the situation, knowing full well that the tree roots that are around that reservoir would eventually weaken and cause that reservoir to leak. That's now happened. And so the question is, what do we do about it? That would require an engineering study. I think we got the numbers back on the study alone was about $60,000. I see Mr. Singleton holding his face. He's not a fan of consultants. But the point is, something must be done about that reservoir. And at the time it was built, it was the drinking water for Oberlin. It's no longer the drinking water for Oberlin. It's a recreational area. And we appreciate it, but we have to recognize that it's not integral to the city's water system. So whatever is done with that property, there'll be more public work sessions, but this slide is a placeholder. There will be something happening there. Briefly, North Prospect Street and Smith Streets, those are two dead-end streets in Oberlin. For many, many years, residents on those streets have had to deal with garbage trucks going down the street and then having to put on their beepers and back out of the street. Same with school buses, same with fire trucks. The street has no turnaround at the back end. So this year, we're going to put turnarounds at the back ends of both of those streets. And finally, and there'll be a slide right after this one, the George Abram Pavilion and the Underground Railroad Center. Hold that thought. We'll see the next slide. Sir.
I'd like to close North Hollywood Street as well. North Prospect and Hollywood both back at dead ends, same as Hollywood and Prospect, same as with Hollywood.
Thank you.
And some.
So this is the Abram Pavilion. I think everyone has seen this construction project going on. It's immediately behind McDonald's. Over the past 5 or 6 years, through grants, we have spent approximately $600,000 renovating the Roundhouse. And this year, in addition to more Roundhouse renovations, also this new picnic pavilion with restroom facilities. This is a trailhead that's heavily used through the summer by people biking down the bike trails. It'll start in Oberlin and they'll continue either to Kipton, Mr. Wakeman now in one direction. In the other direction, it continues on, I believe, to Pennsylvania, if you want to go far enough. We'll have, the pavilion is almost complete. We expect it to be open early this summer. The gas solar building, the round brick building, we have to expand the width of the doorway and put in some new lighting, but that building should be open by the end of the year, available for the public to use in the same way that the picnic pavilions would be used. If someone wanted to check it out and hold an event there, it's there for anyone to use. So I touched on the finance slide a little bit earlier. On May 7th, we have an income tax renewal on the ballot. It's a 0.2% renewal. It generates approximately $600,000 for the city. For comparison, a new fire truck is about $600,000. You can think of it in those terms. That is really critical financing for the city. It allows us to maintain our safety services, keep our streets clear, run the recreation programs. It's part of the city's general fund and is absolutely needed. So your support on May 7th is critical, vital to keeping these services going for the city. And finally, Rob.
It's a great day to be in Oberlin.
It's a great day to be in Oberlin. Thank you. Give us a few minutes and we'll get Dr. Hall's presentation up.
Please feel free to eat some of our the advertisements.
You've got the top right up.
just spoke with Superintendent Hall and says that he'll be preparing to give his presentation about the state of the schools in about 5 minutes. Still with us. Again, this is Bruce Walton from the Chronicle Telegram. We're just waiting on their mission to die down from the Oberlin State to City address as we are going into the Oberlin City of the Schools address. I spoke with Superintendent Hall, who said that we will be starting in just a few minutes.
All right, we're going to get started with the State of the Schools address. So if you could make your way to your table. Thank you.
Okay, we're getting started. So allow people to get to their seats. All right, we can count down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. This doesn't work with my kids all the way. 4, 3, 2, 1. An old teacher taught me that it means nothing when you count down to 0 because nothing actually happens. So all the kids always get quiet when you count down. For some reason, it's magic happen. Except if they're your own kids, they won't get quiet at all. Very excited to be here. Thank you very much. Very exciting time for Oberlin City Schools. Very energized. I love my job. I love being in Oberlin, and I have the best community in the county. I love it here. The first thing I'd like to do is thank all of our accomplishments this year are done due to these fantastic people here that's part of our team. We have Ms. Angela Dodson, our treasurer, who keeps me in line, and her main job, I always tell her, her main job is keep me out of jail. Curriculum instruction, we have Mr. Bayless, Pupil Services, Ms. Alec, Steve in technology, Super Steve, phenomenal guy. He came in early and set up everything for us, make sure everything was good. He called me 4 times on the phone to make sure everything was good. Dan Giannicola, operations. He's also district project manager for the new facilities project. Mr. Mike Scott over at Oberlin High School, and Chris Frank. Langston Middle School, Mr. Thomas, who is retiring this year. Prospect Elementary, we have Mr. Eibel, a school psychologist, we have Bethany Baker. And I'd also like to thank our board members, teachers, staff, support staff, students, parents, community, and extensive local, county, state, and federal partnerships that we have within the school district that makes us successful. One thing I want to speak on is very briefly is our district report card. A couple areas I like to focus and we're going to work on. I'm not going to put a lot of focus on the report card because basically it is what it is. But we are working on it. We acknowledge the report card, but there's also some areas that we're definitely going to work on within our report card. Closing the opportunity gap, that's closing the achievement gap, and now it's called opportunity gap, and education words change and then go around a circle. So now it's called opportunity gap, which means we're going to work with areas of interest of working with our students on interventions for them, and all of our students receiving interventions, tier 2 and 3 interventions for our students, especially at the K-3 level. We're also going to work on our literacy for our K-3. Teacher-based teams, which teacher-based teams are teachers when they work together within a grade level. When they work together within a grade level, they discuss data, students, social and academic behavior and achievement. Vertical meetings, a college career ready program for our students, allowing an increase in college and career access for all of our students. And on the report card, this is actually the first time in 3 years we have consistent data. The tests haven't changed currently now for 3 years. This was the only time that happened where they did not change the test on us, which they always usually do. That's just now, but who knows what legislation is going to do next couple of weeks here. And we also want to make learning fun. A lot of times we get away from that. Our main reason why we went to education was to make learning fun. I recall the other day I was helping my wife with a lesson. She teaches at 8th grade science, and she was doing contour lines, and I explained to her that in the military we use that as well. So she said, well, how can I make this lesson energetic? I said, we gotta excite the kids. I said, did you know in the military that we use this lesson? That she downloaded a clip, she put on my old military outfit, went into the classroom, kids were energized, she played cadence music when the kids walked into the classroom, and she showed video on how the military actually utilized that piece, and the kids were excited. She said they were singing cadence all day. So, and it just got the kids energized. But that was a way to teach you standards and to keep the kids interested in what they were doing. This morning I was listening to Sal Khan on the radio coming into school this morning. Our district strategic plan is a major part of focus for our district. He said in one of his speeches, teach to mastery, not to the test. And he made a great analogy. The analogy he made was, okay, teach to mastery, what does that really mean? And we need to focus on teaching to mastery for our students. Suppose I had a 55 on a test, and call it a trig test, because I'm probably going to get a 55 on a trig test. And Rob scored an 80, and Chris scored a 90. So in most systems, what will happen is, since I scored a 55, I will seek some remediation for get my score up to about 45, or the areas I missed to increase my score. What about the student that scored 80? Will he get any intervention of why they missed that 20%? Or the kid that scored 90, that 10%, they're just as important as the one receiving the 55, and they will need same thing. It's my kid scored 85, I would like to know what he missed and how he's going to get better in doing those skills. So a lot of times we miss the whole big picture of teaching to that mastery level for all students, and we focus on that 75 to 80%. And I think within the school system, within the school system, we're focusing on towards that mastery piece of make sure all of our students are getting what they need. Beyond that 70 or 80%, but 100%. Analogy used to was a Jenga toy that they're playing with as well. When students do miss certain things within their lives, we have students, one block of Jenga may be an example of a student's 0 to 3, all the learning things they do. There's tons of standards for them to do. So we'll have a first layer of the 0 to 3 learning, and the second layer will be the first grade learning, and the third layer will be to go on so on and so forth, build up. As you pull out a standard kid missing, eventually that child will have gaps when they get to high school. Then you'll say, well, he didn't get algebra or trig, so it's important for that child to make sure we, as teachers and educators, fill those gaps for those students and make sure we have those interventions for all of our students. That's one of the focuses that we're working on. Last year, our school district worked on a strategic plan with about 40 community members, staff members, and various businesses, a lot of administrators as well. We developed 4 strategies: educational programming, student and family support, communication, facilities, and finance. This year, what I did for my teachers at the beginning of the year, we're only going to focus on 4 areas. That's it this year. 4 things. And we're focused on those things. A lot of times we'll pile a lot of things on people's plates, and our teachers are very, very busy. So I told them that's our professional development, and our time will be focused on these areas here, as far as we'll channel it in these directions. In the area of educational programming, we focus on curriculum alignment and iReady program for the district. And our teachers engage in training for that as well. Student and family support, we focus on PBIS, which is positive behavioral interventions and support, and diversity and equity training for our teachers. Communications, clear and transparent communication, whether it's our website, Twitter, or newsletters. Facilities and finance, building a pre-K-12 facility and having a positive 5-year forecast. Those are the areas we focus on for the year for our teachers. The educational programming work with curriculum mapping. Curriculum mapping, we utilize Sonia Irving, who's an authority in math. Curriculum mapping will happen in all content areas, but this year we place a primary focus on math. All the way from pre-K to 12, we worked on curriculum mapping from pre-K to 12 for our teachers. We allowed them time to create curriculum maps. The purpose of creating curriculum maps is to ensure alignment of standards and goals with learning opportunities from pre-K 12. It provides a roadmap for our teachers to utilize. It just does not allow them to encourage them to use textbook to go from page 1 to page 300 anymore. That's learning is We don't learn that way anymore. That's pretty much out the window now. Dr. Irving helped our teachers over 7 professional development days of working with them intensely on math curriculum mapping. The district, next 2 to 3 years, will have these maps ready for an ELA in all our content areas. Now, students ask what a curriculum map look like for our district and why it's important. This is an example of a grade 8 curriculum map. With the curriculum map, it actually aligns what the teacher is teaching, so it kind of gives them a guide. So real numbers in 8th grade, they do August to September for estimated 18 days. They can go behind or below that. Then they have Unit 1, the central question, standards, and they have key terms for that, materials and resources. You notice the material and resources here. These are areas that there's not one resource saying page 1, please students do answer questions 1 to 5 on page 6 in your course, in your book, textbook. These are resources where students can go, or teachers will instruct and say, you know what, you can do an I Ready lesson to provide tier 1, 2, and 3 interventions, chapter 1, real number. We can do Chronicle course 3, Connect Ed, McCrawandHill.com. So these give them ideas of different things they can do to enhance the lesson and also to reach different kids by differentiated instruction. So if a student is not getting it by I-Ready lesson, they can use the real number lesson as well. So it's catering towards the student and the child to make sure they achieve mastery. Then there's also assessments to make sure the child is actually accomplishing mastery. If not, then they have other resources for that child to utilize. Also, it goes in the same thing here. This will happen all the way for pre-K-12. The important part, this will eventually be online for our teachers, parents, and students. And as a teacher, if I have a substitute classroom, what can happen? I'll just pull this up. I know this lesson's going on. I can click here, and it'll give me actually that worksheet, and I can utilize that worksheet in my lesson. And these are things Dr. Irving helped us on. Another tool we utilized this year, implemented, was I-Ready. You know, a lot of your kids came home and said, we want I-Ready. What are we doing with I-Ready? Our teachers have been utilizing this for the first year. I-Ready provides us with information, and it's not true information, I changed all the numbers in there. This information will tell us why you can look at this, and it tells us the whole year for Prospect Elementary in grade 3. So this will tell us here that, okay, we need to work with our students on entire grade 3. We had 15 kids having difficulties comprehension information.